Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to this meeting of Greater Manchester Police and Crime Panel. First of all, have we got any apologies, Steve?
Yeah, two apologies, Chair, from Councillor Paula Boschel, Salford City Council, and Councillor Kevin Anderson from Wigan.
Thank you very much. Got Chair's announcements. I'm going to take an item on IOPS, which we agreed in previous meetings we'd have an update at future panel meetings. And I've also included an additional item on the agenda, which is following the report last week on a CSE review, which we'll take as item 8. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Phil Davis from Greater Manchester Police to give us an update on IOPS.
Technical lead. Good start. Good afternoon, everyone. For those who I haven't met, I'm Phil Davis. I'm the Director of our IS Transformation Programme in GMP, a position I've held for 4 years. I'm just going to give you a quick update on IOPS, which is our command and control and records management systems that were replaced in July 2019. So as of the beginning of December 2019, we formally exited hypercare with our supplier, which reduced the amount of 24/7 technical support we got based on the fact that a significant number of our high priority defects have been resolved. Confidence was improving with users, and we were starting to see some of the efficiencies of why we bought the system in the first place come into being. We still have some ongoing issues with performance of the system, which we're working through. It's a complicated field to try and diagnose because there's a number of suppliers involved, and we are making progress with that. And we're looking forward to a significant patch upgrade in the next couple of weeks, which will give us some product that was owed to us and some new functionality we've identified in the last 6 months that will improve the user experience, particularly in and around managing intelligence, managing crime, and keeping good data quality processes. In relation to stability, we're in a place where we've reduced our help desk functionality to a business as usual level, and we are seeing through our outstanding work records that we're back to what we would call a business as usual level for outstanding work in queues, crime and incidents and that kind of thing. In terms of efficiencies, we're starting to see efficiencies, particularly in and around our call management. Our 999 calls are at currently January 2020 levels hitting the national target, which this time last year they were not. And our 101 calls have shown significant improvement. In relation to intelligence management, we have worked through the backlogs that were created over the difficult summer period. We have risk assessed every single job in our queue, and any issues we had in and around service recovery have been dealt with on a personal level in each of the districts. In relation to our confidence plan, we have had some issues over the last 6 months in relation to confidence levels of users. We basically had, as with any large-scale IT change, a significant period of impact for our users. We had over 11,000 people using the system. And due to some of the, foreseen and unforeseen headaches we had last year, confidence did dip in the product. We've put a huge amount of effort into restoring that confidence with a new scheduled confidence plan and a team sitting behind that, with some really strong focus on engaging with frontline users, with partners who receive information from us, and from those sitting behind the scenes who make sure that our data quality is of a level where we can submit our annual data returns to the Home Office. So that has seen an increase in confidence. It's also provided us with a huge amount of information about what we want to do next, i.e. how we want to improve the system over 2020 and beyond. The platform we now have, as soon as we've sorted out our annual data return issues, will really put us in the 21st century for sharing data, for compiling analytics with data from other agencies and helping us make decisions effectively and efficiently. And that's where we are. So I'm open to questions.
Thanks, Phil, for that update. I will open up to questions. Amanda first and then David.
Thank you, Chair. Phil, I'd like to ask about the data that is shared with local authorities in terms of performance locally, what's happening, how enabling us to plan and react. We're not getting that data through at the moment. It's very patchy, it's unreliable. When are we going to see an improvement and get some decent data through?
We're hoping that will be resolved by April in its entirety. What we're doing is a step-by-step approach on a priority basis to which information is most important first. The two issues we've got that are causing us this problem in relation to publishing data, one is around Home Office codes, which is a technical anomaly that occurred on launch that we didn't spot in testing. And the second one is around trying to improve the culture of data inputting to quality, particularly around the creation of addresses. So if you've got data errors in addresses and data error in Home Office codes, those were the two key pieces of information you need for good quality reporting to partners and to the Home Office. That is now being treated as a critical matter, and we've got a huge team of people focused on it to try and resolve it as soon as we can. What we are going to do is explore opportunities to do some of that work manually before we get the technical fixes, but with some assurances from our suppliers that the technical fix isn't far away.
Thanks, Phil. David?
Mine's on data too. I mean, the one issue which I'm concerned of today is that the data we're getting is non-existent. And I'm hoping that when you do bring this presentation forward, it won't alter the data comparisons with this year's performance. Because it's important that we actually compare like we like. And what we're always accused for, not the police, as some council members, is every time something goes wrong, you want to change the format of reporting, rather than so that comparisons are not easily done.
I totally agree. Data is our lifeblood. It's really important that the whole of the data set we have, and we have got a full data set for 2019, it's important that the whole of the data set we have for 2019 is cleansed and is in line with the 2020 data set that we're now starting to see the fruits of. We don't want to publish that until we're happy that it's right. We haven't lost any of it, so it's a backtracking exercise to get where we need to get to. But I totally agree with you. Long-term comparison is absolutely vital for us as well.
Majid?
Thank you very much. You spoke about confidence levels of users, and you said that it is improving constantly. So what are the biggest issues or biggest issue at the moment that is eroding confidence? And when do you think you'll be at a place where you should be and want to be with the system in its entirety?
We have a top 10 list of issues. The two main issues that come out loud and clear is one is our search functionality, which links to our data quality as well. And the other is around the performance of the system and when it's been going slow. So the performance of the system, I'll start with the second one because I've already touched on it. There is a separate silver command structure from a technical side of the business focusing on that with all of our suppliers, because as you can imagine, each supplier's got their own take on why there's an issue, and often it doesn't relate to their product. There's a whole raft of different suppliers in the mix for this one. There is a silver command from a technical side working through the performance problems. It's making some really good progress in terms of diagnosing what's stopping the thing running from as quickly as we want it to, and we're starting to see some patches come through in the background that help fix that. The second bit is in and around the search functionality. So the principal product in police works around allowing intuitive search isn't as intuitive as some of our users would like. Now, we do suffer a little bit here from managing the Google generation in relation to younger in-service officers and staff who expect just to type something and get what they want. I could talk all day about the limitations of Google, but I won't in relation to what it gives back to you. But the search functionality of this product is not as intuitive, and you have to be much clearer in what you're asking of it. So there's an education piece there, but also we've got some assurances of some significant technical investment in search, which will be ready by May, June time. That we think will have a significant impact on residue confidence issues, and we think it'll have a huge impact on our data quality issues, because users are taught to search before create, and we don't want them to create items that are already in the system. So that's our number one priority.
Thank you. And Stephen?
Cheers, Nigel. Two questions, if you don't mind, please, Nigel. Phil, when this came about, the fact that you'd got involved in IOPS and you said you'd been involved for quite some time, the second question, I'm not trying to wind you up, by the way, but it's a difficult one, that next one here. Let me just try and get this one out. So when IOPS came along, that day when you found out it was crumbling, when you woke up that morning, did you the lead weight at the bottom of your stomach and you're thinking, oh, crikey, oh my God, what am I going to do? How do I tell the Chief Constable this? How are we going to react to the public of that? Because if you've been involved to such an extent, you must have cringed, man, that day when that got switched on. You must have been thinking, oh God, all this work's taking place and it's just crumbling around me. What do I do?
I would challenge the word crumbled. However, 2019, and particularly the summer 2019, was the most difficult period of my 22 years of service. It was basically a critical incident that went on for quite some time, with me as the Silver Commander for it. And yes, there is an awful weight of responsibility in relation to making sure that everything works. We did a huge amount of work before we launched in relation to worst case scenario planning. We did a lot of tabletop exercising. And we did plan for the worst case of we turn it on and nothing happens. What we had was we turned it on and for 2 weeks it was, everyone was pretty pleased with how it was going, and then we started getting these issues creeping through, which we didn't have an immediate technical answer for, and that was very difficult. But we had a very clear command structure in place. We had very good technical support, and we were able to work through those problems. And I think in the future, people will come and look at GMP to see how we managed through that time, because there are plenty of examples around the country and beyond of IT launches that go very, very wrong and don't ever recover, and I think we are definitely recovering. So for UK policing, I think we would expect people coming to learn how we got through last year.
Thank you. This is difficult, this, and I'm not trying to wind you up. Right, so this time last year, in fact, tomorrow, the Chief Constable was sat where Claire is. First time I met him, and he turned around, he was talking about the cuts, and he turned in, talking to all of them, and he turned in and goes, Steve, do you realise our policing system operates on a graded system from 1 to 5? 1 is now, under blue light conditions, guys, you're going now on blue lights, and the second response is, you have to respond to incidents within 60 minutes. And he said because of the cuts, it's now over 5 hours. And I looked at him, I went, what, 5 hours? Anyway, this is my tricky question. Because of IOPS, and because of the fact you've had the reduction of 2,000 police officers, how can IOPS offset that fact that you've lost those personnel?
Okay, no, it's fine. Well, the first and principal point that I want to highlight is our command and control system before IOPS was 25 years old. It was a when I first moved to GMP 10 years ago and I saw we were working on a green screen format, I thought, what's this? I mean, I came from the provincial force at the time, Homicide Police. It is impossible to maintain 21st century policing and all its complexities on a system that's 25 years old. So immediately moving to a modern system that's already live in a number of forces and has proved to be successful, I think had to happen, and sooner rather than later. So I am confident, based on the fact that we've simply moved to what is a modern system that's already been demonstrated in a number of forces that works well, that will give us immediate efficiency gains. The second point I want to add is in and around the platform we're now on allows a lot more flexibility for innovation. So if you're on a modern Microsoft platform rather than a DOS-based green screen platform, it allows a lot more innovation in and around how you can use artificial intelligence to help with call management. And that's ideas, those kind of ideas we're starting to talk about now, which we wouldn't have even entertained with our old system. So the future, I think, is bright in relation to using much more intelligent ways to manage demand, but also provide a really good service. You can't do that if you haven't got the platform. So you have to go through that initial pain barrier to set you up for the next 5 to 10 years, which is what we now have. So I'll be looking forward to coming back next year and the year after and talking about some of the exciting stuff we now want to do. Now we've got through the pain of 2019 and switching systems.
I'm going to take Mike, and I think I'm going to then try and wrap up this bit of the proceedings.
Thanks, Chair. Phil, you've had terrible press, and you've spoken extremely eloquently and explained very, very clearly what the phases of this programme have been today. You know, what plans have you got? I mean, what I'm trying to say is, why can't you go and speak the same way as freely as you have done to us today to the press so they get this story straight, because I just think it's a story that needs to be told, but the press have absolutely hammered GMP over this, and very unfortunately, and the deputy mayor and the mayor, and I can see there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, you have spoken very eloquently, and I just wish what you're saying to us today could be said freely to the press and properly reported in the press.
That's a really interesting question. It's a really difficult one, this, because those headlines really did hurt last year, because we were trying our hardest to get this behemoth of a piece of work over the line. And with any IT system change, there's always negative impact, and it makes a really good headline. And particularly when you're talking about public service IT change and the money that's spent on it, that's you know, it makes a really good headline, and it's very difficult to put energy into that at the same time as you're trying to improve public service. And I'd much rather that my team were focusing on improving public service and getting us out of hypercare than having a large team focus on trying to respond to the MEN, because they're going to write what they want to write anyway. I want to be in a place where I've got the data to demonstrate that we did the right thing, and I'm convinced in 2020 we'll have that.
Phil, I want to thank you for the update you've given us, and you know, before you be, Chris has been down here and the Chief's been down here to go through, because as a committee we're certainly concerned about what the headlines were and actually looking beyond those headlines, and I think the reassurances we're getting, we're seeing as well, is really reassuring. I think the bit we brought up regarding the data we share with partners is really important, and it's good to hear there's a clear timeline on that, and really just want to thank you for that continued work. And if you can pass on to the staff as well, because there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes that people can't see, and certainly as a panel I think we should recognise the work that is going on. And I think we will ask again at our next one, just so we're keeping that interest, because it is affecting everything that's happening within GM. But thank you for the update today. It has been appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the main parts of the agenda. Have we got any declarations of interest? If they can be passed to Steve. We've then got the minutes of the meeting that were held on the 14th of November. Firstly, as a correct record... Sorry, Councillor.
Yes, can I make a correction to them, please? On page 3, I did declare a personal interest at item 6 because I actually received an occupational pension from GMP, but it did not prevent me from taking part in the discussion and the decision-making process on the precept setting process. And with Friday's meeting coming as well, I'll make the same declaration at that meeting, but I will take a full part in the debate.
Okay. I've just got one typing correction or name correction. On 1937, the former chair of the police authority was Stephen Murphy, not Stephen Smith. So just correcting for our record on that one. Otherwise, are people happy with the correct record? Sorry, Janet.
I was just going to mention that the additional meeting is in place, as it says, resolved, and that the arrangements will be made, but we haven't actually stated that, have we?
No, because at the meeting when the minutes were taken, there wasn't there, but yes, we have, yeah. That meeting is there. No, that's fine, and I think we are meeting on Friday, and I believe papers are imminently going out for the precept meeting. Okay, I'm going to move on then to item 5, which is learning from incidents from local authorities. Please that Julie is going to take this paper for us.
Yeah, hi, my name is Julie Walker. I'm from the AGMA Civil Contingencies and Resilience Unit. So, as I said, this paper just outlines some of the learning from major incidents during 2019, and also some of the activities that we've undertaken to address that learning. As you'll see from the paper, there's been a number of significant incidents throughout Greater Manchester during 2019, starting off on New Year's Eve with the Victoria stabbing, and some other significant ones were a number of flooding incidents throughout 2019. We've had the Toddbrook Reservoir, which I'm sure you'll remember, and also the Cube fire in Bolton. So there have been a number of significant, and this paper just sets out some of those. In addition to that, we've also had, throughout 2019, a number of pre-planned events or demonstrations. Throughout 2019, there was a number of Extinction Rebellion, the environmental protests. We've also had the Conservative Party conference, concerts, and also the Tour of Britain, which touched through every local authority area as well, which was fantastic. Throughout that learning, what we try and do as a unit is to look at the learning, identify that, and then support local authorities in order to implement actions to make sure that we take that learning on board. Some of the key actions that have been identified probably won't be a surprise for you in terms of the first one I've highlighted is the importance of the role of working with voluntary agencies, both at a local and a national level. And the unit that I work for are part of the Voluntary and Community Sector National Emergencies Partnership. And through that, we're able to share some of the work from Greater Manchester, some of that we've started to develop in Salford, and we're rolling out through two other local authorities as well. Also, the essential role that resilient communities play in ensuring that we're able to respond and recover from emergencies. And there's been some ongoing work with communities looking at developing an intergenerational project as well as strengthening our work with the voluntary agencies. And we'd like to bring another paper that just goes into that in a little bit more detail at a later date as well. In addition to that, there's the Grenfell Tower Phase 1 report. And although that focused mainly around the fire service, there are some learning that's come out for local authorities. So again, we'd like to bring back additional paper on that to highlight that learning. And finally, in this section, there's been identified that it would be beneficial to develop a large urban fire plan. And that's not about putting the fires out, because fire service are very good at that, but it is about looking at those wider incidents in terms of evacuation and environmental issues that councils very often have to step in and support with as well. Another area that we've continued to work on is the learning from the Kerslake Arena review. Specifically for local authorities, this has led to the development of a mayoral protocol for the role of the mayor in Greater Manchester. And it's been identified as well that it would probably be helpful to have something similar for leaders of councils and the city mayor as well. So we're looking at developing that in 2020. We've also supported the development of a psychosocial plan with Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership, and led a number of learning sessions related to the Kerslake review. So things like a psychosocial session that was delivered by Dr. Marion Gibson, who's very experienced within that area, and also one of our coroners led a session for local authority staff and multi-agency partners, looking at the process that they will go through to identify victims should there be an incident that has large fatalities. Obviously, throughout 2019, we can't miss out the work that was going on to support the planning around the potential for a no-deal EU exit. I won't say that much more about that, but we have supported that throughout the year. And then at a local level, with local authorities, we've looked specifically around planning, training and exercising. And some of the specific things that we've done are ensured that we have an annual training programme, and that's not just for local authorities, that's for multi-agency partners, so that they're training with the partners and understanding their roles better. We've also developed evacuation plans for all of the 10 local authorities, and throughout 2020 we'll be rolling out a exercise to embed those, looking at both evacuation and flooding. Some of the other things, we've had our first strategic level exercise for control of major accidents and hazards, which are coma sites. So we held our first strategic level exercise from that, and the lessons have just been signed off, and we'll be looking to implement them in 2020. And so really it's just to outline the work that has been done throughout 2019 to support local authorities. And there's 3 recommendations. One is just to note the learning from those incidents, but also to support the development of the protocol for leaders and city mayor, and also the 2 additional reports that are highlighted. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I'm going to open that up to members. Any comments or questions at all? Stephen.
Please now, Julie, that Coma strategic review that you did, is that the first time we've done it in Greater Manchester? I think it is, isn't it? I've not heard of that before.
It's the first one at the strategic level. So we have Coma exercises that run at the what we call the silver command level, and they're frequently because every Coma site has to do an exercise every 2 years. But at the what the old term of the gold level, that's at the first exercise that we've run.
Thank you.
Okay. Richard.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing this paper. Just a couple of things. And so the first one is, when you spoke, you said we shared a lot with the local authorities, and then once a year, multi-agency. So is there a missed opportunity to share the learning on an ongoing basis with others? Okay.
Oh yeah, so through the Local Resilience Forum, we work together with multi-agency partners. So all the learning that's identified is done in a multi-agency format, as well as doing that as a local authority as well. So if there's an incident, we'll run a local authority debrief, but we'll also do that on a multi-agency basis as well.
So just sort of following on from that, so in terms of that multi-agency working, is the voluntary sector included in that?
Yes, yeah. So we have a specific group for the voluntary agencies that works at a GM level, and then also there's a lot of work that's been going on at local level as well with the voluntary sector.
Thank you.
Beth?
Thank you, Chair. Just for information, obviously there's an awful lot of work going on at local level. And in addition to that, there's an overarching Greater Manchester Resilience Forum that you'll be aware of that's now chaired by Nick Bailey, Assistant Chief Constable, and Cathy Oldham, our Chief Resilience Officer, who reports to me every quarter around the work of the Greater Manchester Resilience Forum, is in the process of developing a Greater Manchester Resilience Strategy, and that will be available for consultation, I think, towards the end of March. There's a lot of learning here that will be informing that strategy on account of the experiences that we have, but also because of Cathy's connection to the Global Resilient Cities Network and the recognition, really, of Manchester within the 100 Resilient Cities programme, which has been very important to us. And also, I think because of that work, just to let you know that Cathy Oldham is also a strategic advisor to the Grenfell inquiry in recognition of her expertise, but it gives us a very close insight now to what's coming through the Grenfell inquiry, which will inform our strategy. Okay.
Thanks. Can I thank you for the report? It's one of those reports where you actually realise what's actually taken place within the conurbation over a 12-month period. But it's also a great example of how that joint working of going back to AGMA before the combined authority actually gave real I think a real strength in the partnership workings for pulling that unit together, because there's a lot of examples here that if one authority had to deal with it on their own, the experience wouldn't be as fresh as it needs to be. And I think that joint working is proved dividends over the year. I was in London last week speaking to some of the London authorities about how they should be looking at doing some joint working, because they're quite often still quite insular in some of the work that goes on. And I think that partnership, because it means the trust has been built up beforehand, and it's very good team working. So I thank you for the report. I say it's one of those ones where you look and you realise how much has gone on over 12 months, but actually that some people wouldn't even realise. So thank you for the work that goes on, and thanks to the teams that pull that together. So it's certainly appreciated and quite an informative report. And are we happy with the recommendations that are set out on the report? Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, we've agreed at each of the panels to have a look at one of the priorities of the strengthening community in places at the plan going together. This time we're having a look at the priority 3, and I'm going to hand straight over to Beth.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just introduce this and hand over to Laura, who's compiled the report, and to say that, she's actually done a great job, because the difficulty with this report is what we could leave out. There's so much that we could actually put in. It was a challenge to make sure that we gave you a really strong flavour of the activity. And I think what we wanted to convey, and I hope you feel the report does, is this actually for all the 3 priorities in the report, but particularly for this one on communities and places, that this is not in any way all about the police or any one agency, that achieving the priorities under this pillar of the report depends absolutely crucially on the work in the localities. And so what we've tried to do is give you a flavour of, what the report said and how not just us but you with us are delivering on some of those priorities, and a flavour of some of the real innovation I think that's going on at in different community safety partnerships and so on, and with my team as well. So thank you, Laura. Over to you.
Okay, so I hope you've all had a chance to read the report, because there is a lot of information. I recognise it's long. It was a lot longer. I have cut it down. But essentially as Bev said, what I've tried to do is just give examples of each of the priority areas and how working in partnership locally, how some of the funding that Bev's allocated to community safety partnerships, it's actually working and making a difference on the ground with our communities. So within priority 3, which concentrates on strengthening community in places, there are 7 high-level commitments, and I'll just go through each one of those in turn. Point 3, I've just articulated the strategic areas of work that Greater Manchester Combined Authority and GMP and all the different partner agencies and districts are involved in. And if you just look through each of those areas of work, we've actually done a whole host of engagement activity right across the city region to make sure that each of these strategies and areas of work really reflect the needs of communities and the needs of agencies as well, and how we can really work together. Underpinned by that unified public services reform model, it really sort of, just that page really brings together what our ambition is around building resilience in communities and places. So if we turn to point 4 then in commitment 1, that's around the nighttime economy and building that vibrancy, but also that safety within our local communities. People, we've got nearly 500,000 employees working between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's a lot of people. It's a massive economy, and how can we make the best out of it really and make that a safe place and safe working environment? So we appointed Sasha Lord as the Greater Manchester Nighttime Economy Advisor. So that's the first time we've done that, and Sasha has been really instrumental in engaging with different communities. He's obviously very experienced in that area and brings a lot of experience to this piece of work. We're also engaging with people who have got a vested interest really in terms of tragedies that have happened to them and members of the community, to ensure that the learning that Julie talked about in the previous report is captured and that we can address issues. So for example, we've got the water safety scheme where we've put in bars at certain points in the canal. I mean, like handles, not bars. You know what I mean? Safety, it's the safety handles, yeah. Not more bars where people can get drunk. And done that, so, at certain sort of hotspot areas. In terms of the safe haven schemes, these have been funded for a few years now and have shown some real success and are just growing and growing. And I guess the importance of those sorts of schemes, we've got the Village Angels, we've got the Student Angels emerging as well. We're supporting a lot of vulnerable people who may have lost their friends, lost the phone's run out of charge, etc. And I just think in the current, with the Sinaga case a couple of weeks ago, it really highlights the importance of these types of schemes. So it's really good in terms of how many, that's all volunteers really who are doing that work. And then we've got a couple of our Greater Manchester local authorities who've got purple flag status, which again is great. And if we can look to expand that across Greater Manchester, that would be brilliant in terms of highlighting the good that's in our nighttime economy and not just the bad, because sometimes it does get bad press and doesn't necessarily need to. And then we are developing Martin's Law, which is one of the mums, the mum of one of the victims of the Arena attack, wants to campaign to improve the security at events venues through introducing this law. So that's another thing that we're involved in. And then the Violence Reduction Unit that I know you know a lot about because you've had reports on it. One of the priority areas in that is tackling crime in the nighttime economy and violent crime in the nighttime economy. So a whole lot of work going on in relation to that priority. Do you want me to finish the report and then do questions, or do people want some questions as we go through?
Yeah, I think go through the report.
Go through, yeah, okay. So commitment 2 is around what tools and powers have we got to improve community safety on the roads. And when we were putting together this section of the report, there's a lot we're actually doing to improve that community safety. And I didn't quite expect all the different ways it was going to come into me, really, in terms of some of the activity that's going on. So Salford are doing some of that the bus lane enforcement to solve the traffic problems, really, you know, a lot of congestion, and that's worked really well. Oldham have done some work to tackle antisocial parking, which we know can lead to neighbourhood disputes, so that seems to be working well. And then Stockport have done some work around car cruising and using PSPOs to disperse those events. And at Greater Manchester level as well, following the tragic death of Sophie Lyons, who was killed in Trafford Park when she was watching one of the car cruising events. We're doing some work to make sure that the operational protocols can be strengthened, actually. So that's an ongoing piece of work, and we can come back at another meeting if you'd like and report on that. So there's a lot going on in relation to that, improving the safety of roads. And then the next one, commitment 3, is around safer transport and public transport networks. So I know at the last Police and Crime Steering Group, you had a report from TFGM that articulated all the good work that they were doing. So the Travel Safe Partnership is part of that work and is supported by GMP's transport unit. So they've got 3 aims: to identify and respond to criminality and ASB across the transport network, work with police and partners to look at threats and solve those threats to the transport system, improve public safety, and then support local campaigns. So last year, the Deputy Mayor committed to an additional 50 police officers in the transport unit through the precept. And basically that means we've got warranted officers now as opposed to PCSOs who can take on those cases and respond to those crime reports much more effectively. And there's some of the, on page 30 of the report, are some of the positive successes that we've had in relation to the introduction of those. They're really good, and it's good that we can actually measure them as well, you know, and count stuff. Yeah. So that's been a real positive. And then just in terms of the safety and the road safety, the Deputy Mayor's also commissioned some research into looking at road traffic collision fatalities, just to look at the demographics of the people involved in those and if there's any preventative work we can do around that as well. The Fire and Rescue Service, the police, MWAS and Salford Foundation Trust are also involved in a Safe Drive, Stay Alive campaign, which is targeting people who are just about to take the driving test. And I think we've delivered performances to over 9,000 young people, which is really good. And that's just about people recognising the impact of driving, you know, without care, too fast, all those things that when you've been driving years, well, you may or may not be better at, but something for young people to think about really just before they pass the test. Commitment 4 is around preventing and reducing homelessness and rough sleeping, and obviously that's something that Andy and Bev are both really keen on to tackle across Greater Manchester. Within this, I could have put absolutely hundreds of examples actually, so I've just picked out some key ones just to sort of demonstrate the difference in some of the work that's going on. So in terms of the services that Bev commissions, she's responsible for commissioning services that support vulnerable people in custody. So when they're arrested by the police, and what we've done there is made sure through our liaison and diversion service that people who are vulnerable due to their housing or housing situation actually can get signposted into support. So I think that was 12% of service users last year, which is a significant amount really. And there's a case study there of positive case study of the community support navigator role that exists within that service. Stockport have done some really good work with their housing providers and have looked at how the impact of universal credit and done some training with our housing providers to understand what the impact of that is, raise the challenge with their housing providers so that they understand more, the staff understand more about the impact on people who may be at risk in terms of their housing. And then they have funded the Olive Community Project through the Standing Together Police and Crime funding. Again, Manchester has got the Art Project. I'm not going to go into detail in all of these, they're all here. So, the commitment 5 is around the community safety funds and supporting people and communities to build resilience. Over £2.8 million was invested in community safety partnerships, which was increased by another 1.1 million in 18-19. So 76 community and voluntary groups have benefited, which I think across GM that's absolutely huge numbers. At 8.1 on page 36, I've just articulated some of the types of projects that have been, you know, some of the themes really that have come out of some of the projects. There's again a wide variety of really innovative stuff, actually working with offenders, neighbourhood watch schemes. I didn't quite realise that we still had neighbourhood watch schemes in such abundance, really, and the commitment from the volunteers who run them is really it's really positive. And again on page 38 we've just highlighted some of the outcomes really of those community safety grants and the positive impact. So what really struck me was the engagement of those local communities in helping to identify issues that affect them and then working together to resolve, and working with a whole range of partners to resolve the issues that are, you know, really matter to them and actually may appear low level in some respects to other people who are dealing with all sorts of issues, but actually that ASB on the street corner does affect you, and how can we work together to resolve it? So there's some really great examples of how that funding's being spent. The other thing the funding has enabled is some groups to get match funding as well, so it's not just our investment, it's been added to from funding streams that local authorities on their own potentially wouldn't be able to bid into because they're for voluntary sector organisations already. And sometimes you have to have that match funding first, so it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. So that's worked really well. So on commitment 6, this is talking about the protection of our public spaces and the sustainable local solutions. Again, we've got some great examples in Rochdale, CCT example in Oldham, Bolton have worked to tackle environmental crime and fly tipping. Again, there's a neighbourhood watch example. One I particularly liked was the using a PSPO to reduce the risk of moorland fires. You know, was it last year or the year before? I've lost track of time. But when the fires on the moors happened, and Tameside and Oldham worked with the Fire and Rescue Service to put a PSPO in place, because I know people were going up and sort of exacerbating the situation. And then Lee did a month of action around their Stronger Communities partnership. And did some feedback with their residents after they'd done it. And it was simple things like cutting back trees so that walkways felt safe, putting light in there, getting rid of graffiti, quite simple stuff. But the feedback from residents in that area said they felt safer than they'd done in 15 years and the environment felt peaceful. So I think for feedback like that, for something so simple, again, really, really positive. And then the last commitment within this priority is around working with communities to establish the understanding around rights and responsibilities. I think we've probably demonstrated that a lot within the rest of the report, really. You know, there's a lot of work going on very at grassroots levels within those local communities. Trafford have got a great example of their community cohesion forum, where they are involving local people in decisions that affect them and actually giving them some power in terms of those making decisions about how funding's spent. So I think they allocated £80,000 to local projects, and the community's actually identified hate crime, knife crime, social isolation and loneliness as their key issues, and organisations were invited in. So I think that was a really positive. At the last Police and Crime Steering Group, I spoke to you about the Scam Busters project and the online fraud for older victims project, which we're hoping to expand across Greater Manchester, so I've put some information in about there. And then we've also spoke in previous meetings about the Shared Futures Group that was the culmination of the Community Recovery Group and the Cohesion Commission that the Mayor commissioned in the wake of the Manchester Arena attack. On the back of that, we've hosted community events. There was the Cohesion Summit. Some of the events are there, and again, just simple tea and talk sessions using Dan's radio broadcast, very simple community ideas that just bring communities together and help to demonstrate similarities and integration rather than difference, which I think is really important. I recognise that that is a really rapid run through, and as I say, I could have tripled the length of this report. We got that much information, so thanks very much for to everyone who's provided that, because it was, you know, a good read for me. I guess the last thing I wanted to say was just about the impact, really, because it's all well and good me sort of saying thanks for your information, but actually, how do we know it's making a difference? And I think the real evidence of that will be through the perception survey. When we start to get the results of that, I think we'll really be able to demonstrate what's actually working where, possibly start to understand why, and then we can really sort of dig into the areas where there are any gaps or if we need to address anything else.
Laura, thanks for that. I know when it's nearly 2 years ago, isn't it, since standing together, for the plan was came together. I think we felt at the time it was really important having those three sections that were really accountable. And I think now seeing the report come through, where we've had three very clear reports, and this one very much is how it's impacting our local communities. And actually, I think we can all take something back to our own districts about what's happening elsewhere as well, which is quite important and useful. I think it's certainly something worth sharing, which with any scrutiny panels that are covering some of the police areas, I think it's a really useful document to be sharing with those, because it shows on the ground what's actually happening when people say there's nothing going on. So I think that's something that's really important. Anyway, there's a lot in there. There's a lot coming in any other areas. So obviously Laura is and the team here are here to answer any questions as well that we might want to raise regarding that. Any takers? Janet.
Sorry. In the purple flag status, Laura, obviously on page 39 you talk about Rochdale Town Centre Operational Support Group, which is kind of one part of that journey. How do authorities access the purple flag process?
I will find out for you because I'm not sure unless
it's a scheme which is basically an accreditation process. So there's an organisation that deals with this, and you know you go through a series of meeting the requirements of the accreditation. I think Bury was the first one in Greater Manchester to do this, and I've been up and visited Bury and talked to some of the retailers and so on. I think it's twofold. I mean, one is actually, you know, getting the purple flag, which is good, it's a milestone, but the real benefit is the engagement that it involves to achieve that with your retailers, with members of the public. So it's a process for focusing people on how to improve safety, you know, in your town centres and particularly in the nighttime economy. So it's, you know, Bury has found it very, very positive, and the people I talked to up there were simply very positive about it.
Yeah, because I just think that we're at a stage now where with a new complex opening and an expansion in the offer that's in the town centre, we may be ready to do something like this, and then I'd like to take that forward to my officers so that we can do that. Thank you.
It's the Association of Town Centre Managers, Councillor Emsley. There's a board that oversees it. Yeah, so you've got a couple of town centre boards, haven't you? They should link into that, and they can do the application process through that. Yeah.
I think that's again a perfect example where we've seen some good practice elsewhere within the conurbation, and actually looking at how we can spread that out. Any other comments, thoughts or comments? Stephen?
Nigel. Laura, you can see that you're dead keen. You can see that you care passionately about what you've done. But from a personal point of view, just you yourself, where do you think the greatest success has been? And how much time can you spend on that one?
Salford Council Lancaster. That's because I'm a born and bred Salfordian as well. I think it's around that real grassroots community engagement. I think you can see real differences with quite small pots of money because it's about that commitment from them. So we've got loads of examples of sort of mental health projects for dads who are struggling. You know, there's loads and loads, and it's about that commitment from at the grassroots level. And I think it's, you know, the infrastructure that local authorities have got in place to access those communities and the work that's developing locally to access those communities, I think is really, really crucial. And that's the bit through all of this. You can have your tools and powers and your legislation, but actually it's the people in those places. And it's bringing them all together. And it's the collective, you know, the Lee Week of Action, and people saying they've never felt as safe in 15 years, things like that, you know, those sort of lines. It's a one-liner, but that actually means the world to that person who's isolated in their house on their own, thinking, oh, you know, they feel safer, so I feel safer. And it's that community bit, really, that I think is the real success.
Thanks, Stephen. I think my nickname for Stephen now is our own Columbo. We just need to get the right jacket, because the way he asked the question is actually superb. He manages to get right into it. I've got Amanda, then I've got Mike.
Mine's just a comment, really, Chair. It's a really good report. There's a lot of information in there, a lot of positives in there. From a Stockport perspective, you know, we've made great gains through this plan. I think the plan gives us the focus to do what we need to do at a local level. It's not prescriptive. We don't have to do it a certain way. We can do what we need to do to meet those priorities based on our needs as an authority and as an area. The one highlight for me, and it's something that was talked about on social media, was we had the transport team in our bus station where we'd had incidents of antisocial behaviour, groups of young youths hanging around and targeting children coming over from school, stealing bikes, everything else. And that message now that these guys are around and they're patrolling, because we said, why are they there in the day? Because actually incidents happen in the day as well as at the night. But what it's doing is creating that sense of well-being and safety that people can move around the town. So we've got the purple flag status fairly recently, and we're really pleased about that. But the whole area feels positive, safer, and we've got increased visitor numbers, and our town centre's starting to grow again, despite the issues around people not shopping. You know, it's really good.
Brilliant, Mike.
Thanks, Chair. Amanda's actually just already raised it, and I think the travel unit, the GMP travel unit, has made an absolutely huge difference. Not just, particularly on the Bury and Altrincham corridor. We had a lot of problems at Altrincham interchange, and this has been addressed now, and local residents are noticing that and feel safer because of it, and have commented on that. So that was a really, really good initiative that was brought in, and I know there's a lot of the public are very, very grateful for that. And I'm glad that whilst you haven't got Metrolink yet in Stockport, they are attending in there as well, as was promised. So it's, you know, it's properly focused right across, and that's one thing that's impacting right across Greater Manchester.
I'll just quickly respond to those, if I may. Thank you both for your comments. And I think, you know, the travel unit, as you remember, as we're about to discuss on Friday next year's budget and the recommendations, came out of the recommendation to increase the precept, and was an attempt by us building year on year. First year, you know, in a more limited way because of the limited funds from government. But the second year, through the precept, to be able to start to make progressive inroads into the areas that we thought should have priority. And, you know, you were all party to that decision. Just point out something else that I've done recently, which I think is important for you to know. We've kind of reorganised the team somewhat because we've got 2 new people arrived and we've given people some different priorities. But the other thing we've also done is attach individual members of the teams to individual local authorities so that you've got a single point of contact, and we'll be writing about that if we haven't done so already. And on the back of that, and building on this report, we're going to have an event fairly soon, aren't we? 13th of February, when we're bringing your community safety managers and yourselves, you know, everybody's welcome, to actually come and showcase and speak about some of the innovation that's going on across. So, precisely as you say, Chair, people can learn from each other. They don't have to reinvent the wheel in every authority. We can actually learn from what people are doing elsewhere. Okay, so that's the 13th of Feb.
It's in my diary. I've just checked. It clashes with the meeting I've got with Claire already, but we're talking about that one already. So no, I think that's that is really useful, because say the strength we talked about with civil resilience and stuff like that was that working together and that trust and that shared learning. So I think it's really, really vital. Thank you so much for the update on that. I think it has been a really good process, and I think it's worked well that we can do those deeper dives into what's going on. So I think we'll move forward on that one. Okay, moving on to item 7, which is it's a newish addition to our agenda, but regular item, and it's decisions made by the Deputy Mayor over the period since the last meeting. So I think that's really just the report is as it says. If there's any questions or comments regarding that. I'm going to make one comment, and it's some money that was given towards the art project in Manchester, and I know we're seeing huge dividends there of actually the support that's been offered to street homeless and the community, and I know that's making a great addition to the services available, and the police and the local authority are finding that very beneficial. So just an acknowledgement of that. So that's really, really useful. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 8, which is the additional item on the agenda, which is in light of the report that was published last week on the CSE review. And I think I'm going to hand straight over to Bev.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. As I said at the last meeting, and you'll probably be familiar with the background to this, and I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but I'm really happy to answer any questions that I can. The Mayor commissioned this report when there was a television programme in July 2017 in which allegations were made about the failure of local authorities and the police properly to protect mainly young women, not exclusively, mainly in the care of local authorities, not exclusively, from sexual exploitation and failing to pursue perpetrators. And one of the whistleblowers, so-called, was retired detective Maggie Oliver, and the other was Sarah Rowbottom in her previous role as the leader of a sexual health service for young people. Maggie Oliver's claims related to Manchester City Council in 2005 and Operation Augusta, which was set up by the police and the local authority together jointly. And Sarah Rowbottom's was in relation to young people caught up in Rochdale, and that was Operation Span. The terms of reference for the review at the outset, which has been conducted independently by two people, an expert in this area, a very highly regarded person, Malcolm Newsom, and Gary Ridgway, a former senior police officer, and they both work for the National Crime Agency and the government. And they worked together on the review. The terms of reference initially were 3 strands. Firstly, to look at Maggie Oliver's allegation that Operation Augusta was prematurely closed down before all of the investigations into the children who are vulnerable and the perpetrators had been concluded. And the second strand was to look at Rochdale and the allegation that very large numbers of children were simply, dropped through the system there in Operation Span. And the third part of the review was going to look at what are things like now in terms of the way we respond to allegations of sexual exploitation. In the hope and expectation that, having talked about 2 historic events that perhaps did have failings, we would be confident that we could say the system now was much more robust. The report published on the 14th of January is the first strand of work on Operation Augusta. Operation Augusta was established in 2005 after the death of Victoria Agolia, a 15-year-old girl in the care of Manchester City Council. And actually what the report has shown, and this was obviously made public when this report was published, is that before Operation Augusta, it was really clear from the review team's work, looking at case files, looking at police files, that very significant numbers of young children in care in their teens, aged 12 to 15, were being systematically sexually abused by a large number of largely Asian men in the south of the city. That social workers knew what was happening and did not intervene to disrupt the activity or to pursue the perpetrators. Operation Augusta was set up when Victoria died. She died after being injected with heroin by a 50-year-old man who actually had been allowed to visit her in residential care. So the police operation, together jointly with the City Council, was established to pursue that after Victoria's death, although crucially, the allegations about the really serious sexual abuse she had suffered was never investigated then. She died, that was closed, and Operation Augusta was to look at the other allegations of abuse of other children in care. The review team found that there was much to commend in this joint Operation Augusta, that it started off well, the people working in it were committed. It suffered from the beginning from a lack of resources. And then in July 2005, the 1st of July 2005, sorry, it started in 2004, there was an announcement that no further resources would be committed and it was closed down. And they found that that was actually the case. So significant numbers of young people were simply left. There were about 8 criminal justice outcomes, but actually the review team had identified 97 persons of interest, and 68 of those were almost certainly involved in the sexual abuse of children, so a very small number compared to the people that we're concerned about. And a number of those had gone on, the review team found, to sexually abuse children after that operation was closed down. As a result of that, and before the review was concluded and published, because we couldn't have that information and just leave it, the police have opened a new operation called Green Jacket that you've probably heard of. This is not a small-scale operation looking at 1 or 2 cases where we think there might be some lines of inquiry. It is a major operation following any line of inquiry that the police can get from victims whom they are tracing and talking to. 25 of the young people identified as being abused at the time were included in the report in an anonymised way. Those people, now in their 30s, were all obviously contacted before the report was published. A very systematic and robust support package was put in place because of the potential impact of the report, and that's continuing. The police are continuing to, as they talk to one victim, they're identifying more. So we've not yet completed what the scope of this operation is, but we will commit the resources that are necessary to complete this properly. So that's where we are in Augusta. The work in Rochdale had not actually started, but hopefully will start now that we've got, we think, permission to see their case files, which we hadn't had up to very recently. A 4th strand of work at Oldham has started at the request of the leader of that council, because of allegations he has received about historic abuse. And the final strand around what things like now, we've actually done work behind the scenes articulating that, and we think when we get to that, it will look robust. But those other strands of work have yet to be completed.
Right, thanks for that update, or a quick synopsis of the operation. I think it's sobering to say the least. I'm opening up for any comments or questions that we feel can ask on that. Majid.
Yeah, obviously a real tragedy. Young people have been let down and traumatised for 10, 15 years and they're having to relive it now, which is saddening. So you said in your update that more cases are being opened and stuff, and then there's a third strand where we're going to look at the here and now. In terms of any learning from whatever's happened and whatever's been sort of analysed, is that being picked up straight away and not waiting for the sort of final strand?
Yes, that's absolutely crucial. You could not find something out and, you know, so we're cross-checking as things emerge that what is happening now has already taken account of that, and largely it has. Part of the work of the review team earlier on was to look at every recommendation from every inquiry around this area, and then to look at whether those recommendations have been implemented. So that kind of cross-checking has been part of the review. Yeah.
I think it's something that, obviously, this is part one of the report, and you've gone through the outlines of where the other ones are going to come in the months and probably years, being realistic ahead. I think it's something that the Police and Crime Panel would like to be kept in sight of as a both supportive and a challenge, I suppose, in some ways. I think we need to have a look at how that would schedule in, because there's a difference of being involved with those reports and actively seeing what's taking place and not getting involved in the investigation as well, which isn't the case. So I think if we can make sure that we are having an opportunity, like we've had on following this one, of having a comment in place. Any other comments or questions on that? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, if just we can keep cited on it like we've been cited on IOPS, so a standing agenda item, even if there's nothing to particularly report, it's just on the agenda, so that when it does, we do get information that you can give us, that it's there, where, you know, I'm going to come asking for it.
I'd certainly be happy and welcome, actually, just giving you, I can give you progress reports. I chair the steering group, and it's been quite a lonely place sometimes on this, I have to say. So I can just tell you where we're up to, and it may be that you can also be of help in helping us to make progress as well. Thanks.
I think what would probably be useful, and something we can look at for the next municipal year, is how we get updates from operations to there. So I think in the same way we've done the decisions and actions taken, maybe there's a slight updates area where we've got areas of interest where we can actually get that update rather than it just being that standing, because it could be nothing to report, but that could be a one-liner in a report rather than it going forward. So we can have a look at how that's best to be managed for future meetings, but having it on the agenda I think is a useful way of doing it. Colombo, Stephen.
My heart's racing like hell now because I don't normally do this, so I'm really sorry about this, guys. I'm so sorry, Bev. I'm going to get going in a minute. Right, here we go. Okay, right, I'm on one. So, social workers, it's upsetting this, social workers all that time ago knew, perhaps, or they did know, that there was something like that going on. And if they couldn't do it because of money, if they couldn't do it because of constraints of time, and they couldn't do it because they didn't know what to do, but the fact that they might have known and did nothing. If it was one person, or two or three, fine. But there's more than that, Bev. Bloody hell. There's a lot more than that. And the other bit this morning is this more than anything. There's two ex-bobbies in the room here now. If these two guys do anything about this, and they didn't come and disclose it, and that's come in front of me, I'll have your warrant card now. Get out. I will not mess about, Nigel, because of this. Because if a police officer shut that case down because they didn't have money, or again because they didn't know what to do, then we just couldn't handle it. But the fact that they might have known that some person over there has actually been abused, and just give it that, sit back, well, can't do anything about it. What? Where's the bottle, Nigel? Bev, where's the ability to be able to go and say, I'm not having that. Come on, guys, we're going to get in and find it. We're going to get in and find out exactly what's going on. And that's what niddles me more than anything, Bev, because when the investigation's taking place, and you'll find out what remedies can go on, but put it right, and I'm sure eventually they'll be able to do it. That'd be great. But over there's a tidal wave of people, a lot of people that are accountable, that won't be made accountable. And you're thinking, what sort of people? I'd have a job like that to these two bobbies, ex-bobbies in here. Imagine that you're sat next to a colleague in the police force that knew full well that his mate, or whoever, his or her mate, or whatever, had thought, hey, we had to shut that down. Why? Well, you know, it's just too hard to deal with. Nigel, what? What? Oh, my God. Sorry about that, everybody. Sorry.
I'll just make two quick points because that's exactly how I feel about it. You know, what the report makes clear is that amongst the social workers at the time, before Operation Augusta started, there was a culture that saw these largely young women as making a lifestyle choice. So a girl of 12 or 13 or 14 can actually choose to have sex with a much older man, and that's her choice, even though those children were in the care of the local authority who had parental responsibility. Now, I can't really square that, because if it was my child and if it was your child, you'd follow them to the ends of the earth to stop that happening. And many of those professionals would have had children. And what I can't really square is that different standard that must have been applied to the children in their care compared potentially to their own children, because that is the benchmark for me. You know, as a caring professional, it's what you want for your own kids or your own parents, isn't it, that should be the benchmark. That's one issue. And the second issue that they make clear is that in terms of the curtailment of Operation Augusta, that decision was taken by a senior police officer. It wasn't the team on it that wanted to end it. It was taken by a senior police officer that resources couldn't be continued, and that's why it stopped. Okay.
Angela.
I just wanted to add to that, because I think, thank goodness, we've got a change in attitudes and culture from 2005, where children in care were not seen as valuable, and obviously this young girl was not seen as anything to be bothered about. I was a bit sad, and I only heard about the review on Facebook, and I thought, wait, 2005, we're in 2020 now, this review took place in 2017, 3 years down the line. There's been very little said about it, and I think that needs to change as well. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We're learning from our mistakes as we're going along as professionals, and I just think it should have been out there a bit more in the domain about this review taking place over the last couple of years, so people could be aware of it and start telling each other about their practices, and, you know, just pre-warning, really. So just for future reference, if the reviews are going forward, let us know a bit sooner. Thank you.
Amanda.
I'm a bit like Steve. I wasn't going to say anything because I'm really frustrated by the whole report and what happened all that time ago. I think it's vitally important that when you're working with young people in care, it is important that you recognise that they have got the right to make choices. But we, as adults working with those young people, have to make sure that they are making best interest decisions and they're not putting themselves at risk, and that we are making sure that they know the consequences of their actions. And this must not ever happen again to any of our young people that we have got parental responsibility for as local authorities.
I think it's echoing a lot, and I think the part of the review, I mean, they're all equally valuable. It's knowing that actually the practices that are taking place now are protecting our young people. Because it's awful to think 2005 doesn't seem that long ago to me. And I say we're going back, and it's what's in the common in practice now. We need to have that reassurance, because we don't want to be hearing a report in 15 years' time saying that something's been missed now. And I think that's the reassurances that we're looking for now. There's never going to be a situation where something's not going to have gone wrong, but we've got to know we've got all the checks and balances in place to minimise that risk. And I think that's the important thing moving forward. So I think we all feel very numb by what's going forward, and I think thanks for the work that's going on, and we will take with interest the reports that come in the future. Okay, we've got some of the dates for our diary, which have probably got a bit confusing over recent weeks, months, due to lack of clarity as to what budget we have or probably haven't got. So I'm going to hand over to Jeanette just to clarify where we're up to.
It's a big ask for me to clarify that. So you should have remaining in your diary now 31st of January, that is this coming Friday, 3 p.m. here for the precept meeting. That will be a meeting of the panel just to consider the precept. We apologise for any inconvenience. I think the Deputy Mayor has written to you and explained the reason excuse me, for that inconvenience. And then after that, You have, as again the Deputy Mayor has already highlighted, a date in your diary for the 13th of February, which is a shared learning event. I'm not sure the independent members have been invited, but we'll correct that. Which is a shared learning event for chairs of CSPs, lead members and community safety managers. That's taking place at Audacious Church in the afternoon, 1 till 4, I think.
Can we have that sent out because the invitation that was sent out just says to be confirmed?
Well, yeah, we can get that clarified.
We'll get it clarified, no problem. And then the next day after that is the 25th of February. You've all been invited up to Greater Manchester Police Headquarters. The call centre has recently moved there, so we thought it was an opportunity for you to see the call centre in action, answer some of the questions that you've all been having around response times around 101 and 999s, and also get an opportunity to see IOPS live, as in it being used in a live environment. So we thought that would kill a number of birds with one stone, so to speak. And then the final thing that's
10:30 till 12.
There we go.
I don't know the date for the April meeting. That's okay.
The 7th of February, which was the reserve date for the precept, has been taken out, so nobody should have the 7th of February in your diary anymore for any precept meetings. And then there is a normal panel meeting on the 24th of March. I think that's the last one. And I think that is the last panel meeting of the municipal year before you will stop in advance of PERDA and the election period. So I apologise for some hefty dates in your diary. I hope you found it useful. It's a new thing we've tried this year.
I'm sorry, just so, because you weren't on my... yeah, the meeting's scheduled for a 3 o'clock start. If we can get a room available from 2:30? Yeah. 2:30? Yeah. So 2:30, 2:15, or 2:30? 2:30 for a pre-meet, which will send everything, which will be helpful just to go through the I know the papers are, I say, being issued imminently. It means we've got a chance to go through that, but it is that one item agenda, which is considering the proposals regarding the precept. So yeah, that's a good idea, Councillor Bray. Thank you very much. So in that, thank you all for attending. See you all in 72 hours, is it? Something like that, wherever it is. And have a safe journey home, if that's where you've been able to get to.